Hey there. In my philosophy, or not my philosophy, but the philosophy that I bring to you all in this medium, one of the central points of it is thought logic. And there are two types of thought logic that are central to this philosophy. It's this from that and this with that. This from that is the close-minded thought process. Well, that is the thought process of prejudice. And then you have this with that, that is the open-minded thought process, and it is the process of enlightenment. I want to really kind of go into more depth on this from that thought logic, and really kind of show you that it's not an unhuman condition. You know, I can really understand why it is that it's come to be. And this from that thought logic is like, it is central to basically the human experience as it is on the earth today. Look, ever since the very beginning of our development, our evolution, our creation, we, the hominid, the early hominid state, we experienced day and night, okay? And it's been like that since the very beginning of our states of consciousness, you might say. Because what I contend, in the true scope of what I believe to be really true, that has been brought forth to me by a moment of divine equanimity, reincarnation is central in a lot of that. And I truly believe that many of us, not all of us, but many of us experience reincarnation. And it is more central to the idea of what it is. It's not a random thing. It is more central to the idea of what it is that is going to make you more sufficiently you in your creation, and that is the life you will endure. Now imagine, if you will, the idea that you can imagine how complete you would be if you could live a life as every race there is, as every culture there is, as a member of every religion there is. And imagine how complete your humanity would then be. Now, I think that's really kind of the process of creation that God is using here. It's a compartmentalized state of consciousness each time, because that is what is necessary to keep you in the moment, so that the true impact of your emotions in that moment is severe to craft you unique by them, see? And so that's why it is compartmentalized, and that's why people scoff at the idea. Well, first of all, it's not within our culture to even accept reincarnation. It is within, like, say, Buddhism, because of, well, it's logical, for one thing. And also, the one central tenet, one thing I really do like about Buddhism is the idea that it is, for them, there is no mention of a God. And I think that's absolutely great, but we'll go into that later in a different video. But so, to get back to the idea of our earliest lives, as it were, in the idea of maybe reincarnation and how they might have impacted us in what we think today, is the idea that day from night really had quite the impact upon us then in the early hominid state. Because when day went to night, all of a sudden things got really scary. You know, here we were, a hominid society without fire. When things got dark, they got bad real quick, because that's when the predators came out. And as we had no, real way to hear, I mean, we still can't hear at all. We still can't smell at all, hardly. But even under threat, your senses are highly heightened. But even then, you're still vulnerable as all get out. And on a side tangent, one interesting thing is the fact that there is a blind spot here, central, all the way down your back. Now, how is it that we ever evolved to have that kind of thing upon us physically. And what I really contend is that what that represents is not only the point of connection of the hand of God upon you in creation, but it also proves that the human physical being could not have evolved independently. You see, it's like proof that society, it's like how society impacted our evolution to where we always had each other's back, so to speak. See, otherwise we wouldn't have evolved in this fashion. But I think in some ways it is a divine expression. So to get back to the idea of where I was going there with day from night, you know, in an early state of consciousness, day from night would be really significant. So more so than anything we experience today. I mean, you didn't have fire, you didn't have light, and you were getting eaten at night, and it was terrifying. So naturally, in our true way of looking at the world, we still think this from that in that very basic fundamental way, because that is the nature of our animal mind and the way that it was conditioned upon us in our early state of creation. And so what that has done in this modern age is it has manifested itself in the idea of this from that thought logic. And that is what is how you judge things all the time. You always have to say, do I like this thing or don't I? Is this good or is this bad? And there you have it, the initial concept of good from evil, see? Them from us, this from that. And that is the problem that we are at now, where it is time for that thought logic to basically come to an end. And this, with that thought logic, to then replace that within the state of the human experience as it is on this earth, in this dimension, at the behest of God, as it were. So it's not, and in that you have this idea, see, that's how the idea of evil came to be, is it was all that was ever against us. You know, scary predators. You know, I kind of think, well, maybe the little cat that we have as a pet might have been one of those predators that we invited into the circle, you know, as it were, when we were scared to death of the dark, unable to detect what it was that was getting us. Because if you really do look at what people really do believe to be evil, it's always some kind of consumption. Well, not always, but a lot of times it is some consumption idea. You know, some predator with jagged teeth that'll rip your flesh from your bones kind of thing. And in that spin up your, I don't know, what limited ways of expressing this in our current times, but what they call a race bank memory. Such an absurd way of saying it. Because it's not. I think it's something you might have experienced, we all might have experienced, as compartmentalized states of consciousness in previous lives, you know. And it's to say that those things wouldn't have impact upon you, you know, well, it's obvious they would. And so I'm looking to explain what it is that is truly at a person's heart in this time. And it seems to be a lot of that. And in that, this from that thought logic, you have the basics of fear that, you know, now we're going to be afraid of the unknown. Because the unknown is the darkness of night, see? And that is how it still is the fear that is upon you. So how far have we gotten? Not far enough to where you're still in the darkness of fear. See? So there you have it. You're still in the state of this from that. And in that is how the world is prejudiced. It is them from us. It is they are different than us, and so therefore we will hate their differences, and we will war upon them for it, or we will be prejudiced against them for it. It is the very nature of prejudice in the human experience as we exist now. And it is something that is enough already. Things are going to change. We are going to start thinking this with that, because that is what is necessary for us to move into the new age of creation that is upon us. See, we're moving out of the age of magic and mysticism and into the age of logic and reason. You know how there are scientists, there are scientists rather than alchemists. And then before that, there were witch doctors. And before that, you had shamans. And before that, you had magic, I suppose, see? So there you have it. We're moving out of the age of magic and into the age of logic and reason. And therefore, anything that doesn't support the new age is going to be a burdensome expense that may cause some suffering, but it is something that will change. As long as you, and the best facilitation for change, so that it doesn't cut you to the bone, is this with that thought. See, if you're going to think this from that, then you're going to oppose change. Because the very nature of this from that thought logic is oppositional to everything. It is, I don't like this, I don't like that, them from us, not for me, no, kind of thing. It's the way that you turn off your mind. It's the way that you kind of like actually believe in the idea of God in perfection. The idea that God can't change. Because if he did, then how perfect is he? See? So the story has to change and all that. So anyway, I'm getting off track. So it's not, and so it's not a sin from God, so to speak, to think this from that, because what other option do you have? Because to think this with that is going to, I think is more going to require an act of God upon you, maybe. But in any case, you get this idea that there is like some kind of antithesis to that we desire, what we call good. There is an antithesis to good. Well, what you perceive as good is how you've selected certain things to put in the good pile, and you've selected other things to put in the bad pile, because that's what this from that thought logic causes you to do, and therefore now we're going to have evil in the world. See, because that's the bad things, and therefore all the evil in the world is what brings about the bad things and the suffering. Well, see, this is a process of creation, and as such it is all that together, this with that crafts you unique by your experience of it. Now go ahead, tell me that ain't true, and I'll tell you, you're an idiot. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be like that. I should be more this with that. So you see, I really hope eventually that you will really understand what a blessing enlightenment is. My God, this has been an amazing experience. It's sorry I took a while for this last, to get this last video out, but I've been distracted by a few things, and a lot of it is the news lately. I didn't want to go here, but I guess I will. And that is, I was looking at this. This is the Constitution. I was looking up the Second Amendment in here because of the things that have been going on lately, and it says, well, first, let me read to you what the First Amendment says. It says, the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Freedom of speech of the press. Or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government, for a redress of grievances. See, that's the First Amendment. The Second Amendment, now I bring up the first because I'm going to use it as a way to kind of criticize what people think the Second Amendment says. Okay, now this is what the Second Amendment actually says. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's all that it says. Okay, whoops. It doesn't say Congress shall make no law concerning the free distribution and sale of assault weapons. So let's not be reading stuff into the Second Amendment that isn't true, see? Look, in all reality, today we have what is called a weapon of mass murder. You know how we have WMDs, weapons of mass destruction? Well, guess what? In America, we have weapons of mass murder. Those are assault rifles capable of 300 to 1,000 rounds a minute. Where the hell in the world are you going to lay down 1,000 rounds a minute? If it isn't on the battlefield. So the idea that we're going to just allow the NRA to shove the idea down our throats that all weapons everywhere at any time is somehow a responsible kind of thing. I mean, there was a time when the NRA supported gun safety. And now it seems as though they're a threat to public safety by their advocacy of trying to shove the idea of the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law, into the Second Amendment and say Congress shall make no law concerning guns. Well, enough is enough. And it's time to outlaw assault weapons. Seriously. Well, look. I am here for God, to bring about the divine truth that I know to be absolutely true. And where the country has gone most recently with with a lot of things, the idea that the evangelists are going to jump in bed with the worst aspects of Donald Trump. Because what? It's their last hope to maintain their state of governance. That's been a real problem. I felt really bad about that. And the idea that, the conservatives now, they have to say, have to turn their back on everybody and say, well, the NRA pays our what? What are they getting out of the NRA? To where now this is what it means to be a conservative, is to believe in the free distribution of weapons of mass murder. Difficult times, sad times, and I can see why a new philosophy is necessary. A new way of thinking. A new way of thinking this with that. That's what is upon you. And you will change. So with that, see you next time.